So let's circle back to the DNC last summer because while most of the speakers there were people you would expect, current Democratic Rep AOC, former President Obama, one of the things last year's convention was particularly known for was having social media influencers and content creators flooding the roster. And one of those people was Olivia Julianna, LGBT and reproductive rights advocate who at the time had nearly 700,000 followers on TikTok, and now has surpassed that number. And while I had no idea who she was before that, there was one part of her speech that made a big impact on me, pun intended.
Donald Trump's Republicans are making it harder for us to vote, but we won't let them get away with it. And Kamala Harris won't let them get away with it either. But we will only be heard if we vote. As the saying goes, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu.
Very poor choice of words.
Which, being the brutal internet, it elicited hilarious responses. Like American Barbie, if she ordered 3 fewer things off the menu every time she ate there wouldn't be starving kids in Africa anymore. Or Bad Hombre, not just any menu, we're talking the Cheesecake Factory. Or Lauren, is she threatening to eat people? Which, look, I'm not here to shame anyone, but you have to admit the joke's kinda right itself. Like either she was set up to say this as a practical joke, or she wrote this down without thinking it through. And her post on X don't seem to help her either. Exhibit A, saying she will be voting for Harris with the plate in front of her. Or worse, Exhibit B, saying she's down 50 pounds because she cannot afford to eat in Trump's economy. Then posing next to a mountain of cheese puffs to represent that 50 pounds. Setting herself up with responses like, you ate every single bag of those, didn't you? Or, you've decided to stop being a disgusting land whale because Trump won? We literally can't stop winning. Or Andrew Tate being like, so send him a thank you card. And I understand with how bad it's gotten for some people, not being able to put food on the table is definitely tough. But when you post a picture next to a bunch of cheese puffs while complaining you lost 50 pounds, the response is going to be like, boo-hoo, cry me a river, sorry you can't stuff your face anymore. Meanwhile, there are people trying to actively better themselves through a healthier lifestyle. And the more that I think about it, the more I think whoever's doing this advocacy for her must be trying to mess with her. Especially when you see the fact that she has a page on the National Institute of Healthcare Workers where they write that she identifies as a queer, plus-size, disabled Latino. And to my knowledge, she isn't a healthcare worker, so don't ask me why she's there. Because it's not just the fact that she's overweight, or that she's posing next to a bunch of cheese puffs that she should be able to eat. It's the fact that she's on a healthcare workers page. She could at least be advocating for a healthy lifestyle, and maybe I'd give her a pass on calling her a healthcare worker. But I wouldn't trust any of her advice, and yet she wants to appeal to people, and most recently she wants to appeal to men. And here's what she had to say.
I keep seeing people talk about young men in the 2020 cycle, or in the 2024 cycle, and they keep saying like, well, it's because they're not getting laid enough, or alternatively, well, they're just racist and they hate women. So like, it's really, I see these takes coming out from both sides of the party wing, I would say. And I just think that all of that is wrong. I think all of it is wrong. I think the Democrats have a really bad problem of every time we message to young men, we frame it in a way that is wrapped up in the same principles that we critique. We critique the patriarchy. We critique the way that men have higher hierarchy and power structures. And then we message to them as if not only is that the reality, but that they have to continue to be like that. So the example I use in the article is the issue of abortion. When we message to young men on abortion, or men in general, we do it from the position of, well, real men protect women. And if you care about the women in your life, you should be pro-choice. And that might be true. That is true.
Now, I'm going to say this real quick, something that stuck out to me. And I don't mean to pile on her, she's got enough on her plate. I'm done here. But not 2 minutes into talking, she first says it's problematic that the Democratic messaging is demonizing men as racists who hate women, which is true, it's really not going to help win men over to call them that. But then when she jumps into the abortion bit, she says, if you care about women, you should be pro-choice. And I say this as someone who, when it comes to the issue of abortion, I do see it as taking a life, and if a partner of mine opted to get one, it would be very hard on me. And here's where I might lose some of you, but hopefully you'll actually hear me out right quick and we can disagree. I also do believe that I see some nuances that many conservatives who are very, very pro-life don't. grape, incest, I do understand the point of view that regardless of how the baby was conceived, shouldn't change whether or not you should abort it, but especially in the circumstances of grape, if it wasn't a decision the woman got to make for herself, I think there does need to be some consideration for that and some compassion. And from the time a woman knows she's pregnant, I do think there needs to be adequate time to decide if she wants to keep it. Within reason, of course. But I don't demonize the extreme pro-lifers of the world who believe what they do. Now that being said, pretending to care about not antagonizing men who lean a certain direction while saying something that is antagonizing is the epitome of why the Dems will keep losing, because clearly they don't know the messaging they're sending. But what else does this woman have to say?
But we don't come at it from the approach of this is the reality that young men face about that issue. Because it's entirely possible that a young woman in college gets pregnant unexpectedly, and that could upend her life if she doesn't have access to abortion care. But it's also entirely true that the young guy who gets her pregnant, now he's on the hook to not only take care of this child that could be him, that could be coming into the world, but also to take care now of the mother of his child. And I think that it would be so much easier if we just understood that the problems we're having with young men shifting to the right, it's not because they don't agree with us on the policy. They do agree with us on the policy. It's because they feel like we don't understand the struggles they're facing, the actual struggles, not the perceived struggles of the masculinity crisis or whatever it is, the actual struggles.
So according to her, the messaging we need to send towards men if we want them to lean left is, hey, if you don't want to take care of an unwanted baby, we're the party for that. If you want to make irresponsible choices and not have to pay for them, we're your people. Which, even if you are pro-choice, abortion isn't something to be celebrated. And as I've said, I see some nuances, and I've talked to MAGA conservative men as well who on the issue of abortion are conflicted. But oftentimes it's not because they believe abortion is a good thing, it's because they understand the gray area when there's regulation on it. And it's certainly not their top priority, otherwise they would have leaned left. So it really shows how out of touch this lady is. And then she says the masculinity crisis is a perceived struggle. Hello? The ability to look oneself in the mirror and be proud of what they see, for many men, is directly tied to whether or not they see a strong provider who can protect. And they feel less than, and some women too will see them as less than if they can't. It's not a perceived struggle. It is real to many, so again, very condescending whether or not she intends to be. And it's funny that she says that. As she recently posted on X, I wish MAGA cared more about young men's mental health than they do about my pant size, with an article, What It Feels Like to Be a National Punchline, again, saying young men in America deserve better wages, better healthcare, better opportunities, and if Republicans spent half as much time addressing that as they do obsessing over her weight, maybe we wouldn't be facing a full-blown mental health crisis among young men in this country. Which is funny, as I think some of the comments were. I don't think focusing on her weight is getting anyone anywhere. But again, claiming to care about the mental health crisis while downplaying factors that contribute to it doesn't check out for me. Like, there's a reason why young men, just like women, need their spaces where they can be themselves and be heard. Because just as there's a lot of issues that I wouldn't understand are important to women, she's demonstrating that nobody's more relatable to men than men themselves. And one of the outlets for men to be themselves is frats. And here she is pretending to understand frat boys.
Like, there's a lot of men that don't think that way, obviously. And it's just such a negative view to take on like half of the human race.
Well, I also think it's just so abundantly clear that the people who say these things don't actually spend time talking to young men. You know this because we know each other in real life, but I spend a lot of time on college campuses, and I spend a lot of time with
young men.
I love young men. I love frat guys, and in that I realized, like, even the ones that identify as conservative are almost always pro-choice. They're almost always pro-gay marriage. You'd be surprised at the number of them who supported Black Lives Matter. And so I feel like people just kind of lump them into this box when the truth is, again, a lot of them are with us on the issues. They're just not part of our coalition because they feel like they're not welcomed in it.
They're not talked to, right? And yeah, they're not welcome. That's true.
Okay, firstly, something tells me the last thing frat boys want to talk about when you go to their parties is BLM, abortion, and gay marriage. And the last person they want at their parties is a radical activist who'll tell you that if you don't support abortion rights, you hate women. But let's accept what she's saying under the assumption she has empirical data. The premise that most frat boys support those things on a social level. Even if that were true, those aren't the issues that a college student is basing their voting decisions on. So even if she has gone to all these frat parties like she said she did, if that's what she chose to talk about, she missed the mark big time. And if the DNC keeps having people like her as the face of getting men to vote blue, then year after year they will continue to lose the election. But guys, I want to thank you all for watching this video as always, and if you appreciated my commentary, please give it a thumbs up, and if you're new to this channel, hopefully I've earned a subscription. Here's some more videos for you to watch in the meantime. Until next time, peace out.